What's up guys, Matt from GoTherax. So today I want to go over my 200-day push-up challenge. That is 20,000 push-ups in 200 days. It's a ton of push-ups and it was a lot on my body. And in this video, I want to go over my experience, recommendations for you, and just overall, what a challenge is like doing 200 push-ups per day and hitting that at the end of 200 days. Hope you like it. All right, so how did the challenge work? Well, the challenge was very, very simple. I went from 1 push-up a day all the way up to 200 push-ups in a day. And I did that by ones. Day 1, 1 push-up. Day 2, 2 push-ups. Day 3, 3 push-ups. And I think you get it from there. All the way up until day 200 was 200 push-ups in a day. Not all at the same time. I divided these in sets. Of course, when I was doing like 1 to whatever, I didn't do it. But I'd say by the time I got up to around 30 to 40, I was no longer doing it as one set. In fact, if you look at my sets as I go, and I'm going to show you some screenshots of it as well, you'll see that I worked my way up around the time I got to about 100. I was doing sets of up to 50 push-ups, but in general, most of my sets were around the 20 to 40 range for the majority of this challenge. And so I would work my way up, increasing the number of sets I did in a day, and often increasing the number of push-ups I did in a set, working my way towards that 200 mark. Day by day, adding 1 push-up at a time. So the reason I did this challenge is because most people who go through challenges like this tend to be young. And when you go through and you look at a lot of the internet challenges, it's all 20-something-year-old guys and girls doing this type of thing. And here I am, middle-aged dude, 45, and I was like, I wonder what it's like as a older or middle-aged guy to go through some type of challenge like this. I had met and was inspired by one of the other parents on my son's tennis team, where the parents said, "Oh, I'm so sore. I just started this 100 push-ups a day challenge, and it was just killing him." And I'm like, that's kind of dumb. Why, at your age, are you just going to boom do 100 push-ups with no prep? And I thought, what's a better way to do that? And a better way is to scale into it. And so I started with this challenge, a 1 push-up a day, 2 push-up a day, adding 1 push-up a day challenge, where I would be increasing it over time, but could get to a lot of push-ups. And by the end, I wasn't just doing 100 push-ups a day. I was approaching doing double of that for that 30-day month period that was the original thing that this gentleman was trying to do, which was the 100 push-ups a day for 30 days or for a month challenge. I was going beyond that, and I did that by bringing myself up to that point. And so the key to this challenge, and one of the reasons I did it, was I wanted to just teach the right way to do these type of things, which is to increase over time and to not go straight into it. As a PT, we have number one rule for the people that we see, and it generally is too much, too fast, too new. And so adding in something new like push-ups all the time and grading them to being too much and getting there too fast was going to be a recipe for injury. And as we'll go into later in the video, you'll see despite the fact that I graded out, I still had some challenges along the way. All right, so let's talk about my experience in this. My experience was pretty simple. It was actually much easier at the beginning than I expected. Probably should expect it to be pretty easy. And it got really hard towards the end. In fact, the original premise of that I could just build up by adding 1 push-up a day and almost do it indefinitely didn't actually go that well. My original plan, it wasn't a 200-day challenge, it was a 1-year challenge. And then I realized as I got about a third of the way in that, that just wasn't gonna happen. I was not gonna make it all the way to 365 days. Not because I couldn't build up the number of reps, not because I was running out of strength, but because my joints just couldn't take it anymore. So as we look at this, we go, first of all, at the beginning, it felt really easy. Push-ups were easy, I wasn't doing too many. I came into this challenge having the previous year done around a set of 20 to 40 push-ups a day period anyway. So I had a little bit of a base coming in where I generally did a certain number of push-ups every day. I often did them in the morning because I like to do some type of plank thing to warm my back up, warm my core up, and planks are just boring, so I do a push-up instead because you have to hold the same position. So I had been coming into this doing some push-ups, but I added a lot more in this. And so what happened is I hit about day 120 to 130, and I started to experience some of the shoulder problems that I had had. So I have some labral issues always in this right shoulder that tend to bother me. I get a little bit of stitch and some pain, and I'm always constantly having to go back and do some therapeutic exercise and some other corrective movements to try to get that shoulder to work better. And as I did this challenge, it became even more important to do that. And I didn't always keep up really well with my corrective exercise regimen. And so I often ended up skipping that or missing it, and then I started to develop pains in my shoulder. So around day 120 to 130, I developed some pretty strong joint pains that were lasting well after the time I did my push-ups. They were adding up day by day, getting worse and worse and worse, making me dread my push-ups, not because I couldn't physically do them, but because they actually hurt to do in my shoulder. It was around that time that I realized that, I had been doing the same type of push-up all the time. So I started changing up the push-ups a little bit. And that helped. That got me to about day 140, 150. But I still had overloaded my shoulder. And so despite all the variation in hand position and the way I was doing the push-ups, I still had to end up taking about a week off in order to let the shoulder relax, let it heal, let that joint feel better. When I got back in, I immediately realized that getting back in, that if I did more than one day in a row, I was starting to build up again. And so what I started to do is I went to just doing Monday through Friday. Monday through Friday, I did the push-up challenge, and on Saturday and Sunday on the weekend, I would rest. And I tried that until I got to about 160 to 170. And somewhere around there, I realized that still wasn't working. The pain was still ramping up again. It didn't matter that I changed hand position. It didn't matter that I was now taking the weekends off to allow my body to heal and to recover. I was still doing too much, and I was going to need to make changes. And so what I did at that point is I then changed to doing every other day. And so at that point, it allowed my body enough time to go ahead and make that recovery day to day, and it started to feel better. I no longer had the pains that were adding up, and I was happy with where it was going. But at that point, the 365 days of push-ups, increasing one in a year, was never gonna happen. And I realized that I was happy to get to 200, and that felt really good for where I was, but it was also reasonable to go, it's about time to move on to my next challenge that I'll tell you guys about at the end of this video. But the experience was running into challenges as I increased the number, realizing that some of my personal issues and challenges with joints was going to impact this challenge, and eventually realizing that for the best of my body, I didn't need to continue to push this challenge any further, and instead would be able to get better results from doing something else. All right, so let's talk about some specifics of things that I had to give up, because one of the main things that bothered me on this challenge was that I wasn't able to do a lot of the workout things I like to do. I really like to do overhead presses. I do enjoy doing dumbbell press. I do a little bit of bench press, but not all the time. But I really had to stop doing any type of form of a pressing movement in my workouts because of the fact that I was already overloading my shoulders, and I was already overloading the muscles associated with this push-up challenge. And that limited me a lot in my workouts. That meant that I was doing mostly lower body stuff, and that I was doing some pulls and things like that, and rows, but I was really struggling with the not being able to do some of my favorite movements that I think help my body develop the most, especially those pressing movements. I love to do push presses, some push jerks, as well as just some strict presses, and that was one of the exercises I really was trying to push before this, and then in this challenge, I wasn't able to do it. So that changed my workouts a lot. And the other thing that hit me with this is that accessory work that I mentioned that I need to be doing to correct the imbalances and to help keep the shoulder stable, yeah, I generally did those as a warm-up for my presses. So guess what happened when I stopped doing my presses? I also stopped doing all those corrective exercises for my shoulder, and it added up really quick. All right, so we're gonna finish up with what everybody wants to talk about, and that's, what were my gains? Well, overall, what I did notice is I got a substantial amount of just general activation of my chest and of my core from doing this all the time. the reality is that once you're getting above 100 push-ups, you're spending a lot of time in that prone position. So they're getting a really good long plank. And so it did help to activate my core. My core turns on and is stimulated more often during my day just because I was doing this all the time and it became a habit. So I did notice that. I worked a lot with my positioning of my pelvis and trying to get that posterior tilt in my push-ups and trying to maintain that, and that helped with my back pain. And overall, I'm very happy that I did that because I do have a tendency to allow my pelvis to dump forward and to get that anterior tilt and then put a little bit of tension onto my back. And instead, this helped me to learn to posterior tilt, to get my rectus involved, and to get my core working well. Throughout my shoulders, my arms, and a little bit of my chest as well, I do feel like I got a little bit of activation. I noticed that I'm wearing this shirt, which is the same shirt I've been wearing in the before photo, and it fits tighter. I definitely feel that. I've noticed with my shirt off, especially more development across my chest, but I don't feel like I look significantly different after than I did before with a shirt on. I do see a fair significant difference in my chest development without a shirt on, and that is definitely something I'm looking for. That said, during this challenge, the only thing I was doing was push-ups daily, but I did do some other things to help to change my diet and to develop some other stuff. So it is reasonable to say that some of those dietary changes that I've been making in videos like The Factor and so on also had something to play in terms of the development or the change in terms of my core physique and so on. I've gained a little bit of weight across my core. That's why I'm not doing the shirtless photos right now. And overall, I gained a little bit of weight, period, which is probably also part of why I'm just a little bit thicker across the chest as well, because I've gained some weight on there. I didn't do a DEXA, didn't do any specifics to really be able to objectively make a measure, but I can 100% say that I do feel like I stand a little bit better, that I don't have back pain, and that all of my shirts feel like they fit a little bit tighter across the chest and in the arms than they did before this challenge. All right, so recommendations for you. Number one recommendation is do be aware at the amount of load that this is going to be. If you are an aging adult like I am, I know the word aging gets a really bad thing. Aging adult for me is anybody over the age of 30 to 35 and then just going up. And if you're getting older and your joints just aren't going to be able to handle an excessive amount of activity, then you're gonna need to be aware of that with this challenge. In fact, if I had to go back, what I would probably do is I would have probably ramped up day 1 to 100 just the same way as I did. And I would have gone 1, 2, 3, easy, would have kept my sets around 25 to 35 reps probably, and would have been very happy up to about that 100 mark. When hitting that 100 mark, I would have started to give myself a little bit more time off in between, and instead probably would have at that point taken the weekends off and done it 5 days a week up to about the 150 mark, where then I would have started to take every other day and to continue the challenge. Now, would I do this challenge again? Probably not. The reason why is because for me, I do think it was a huge benefit to do the push-ups and to have a daily program of exercise. But to just focus on one specific movement and to repeat that over and over, again, it just became overkill, right? So if I'm doing 5 sets of 40 push-ups to reach my 200, that really isn't giving me a huge stimulus for growth in my chest that's that much different than if I was, say, doing 2 sets of 50, which would be a lot less volume and a lot easier on my joints. The other thing is I'm spending most of my workout time that I'm thinking of an effort in between my day and all those points where I have some downtime to hit the same muscle group again and again. And the reality is that I should be hitting more muscle groups than just the chest and just the arms in that push-up position. There's so many other movements that I could incorporate. And so I felt like that was a loss. In the end, one of the biggest factors for me was just how it affected my workouts. I didn't like not being able to throw presses into my workouts. It felt weird to just do pulling movements and not do any presses. Often I would just skip a lot of the upper body stuff and go straight to the lower body, or I would just skip workouts entirely because I was so focused on, but I just have to do my push-ups. As long as I do my push-ups, that counts. And that especially was the way that it felt after about 120 to 130, when I was starting to have some of the challenges and the pains and so on, that it became more, finishing the challenge became more important than necessarily the reason I was doing the challenge and the stimulus for my physique. So, what am I doing next? Well, the next thing I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be taking this 200 challenge and I'm going to be moving it into a new challenge that I call the hundreds. And the hundreds, I'm going to start with 200. And the idea is I'm going to be doing 200 body weight movements per day. And I'm just going to be mixing it up. So it's going to be lunges, it's going to be push-ups, it's going to be pull-ups, it's going to be sit-ups, crunches, hanging leg raises, it's going to be it could be handstands, it's going to be squats, whatever that I want, 200 body weight movements a day. But also, because I want to encourage my workouts, what I'm going to do is on the days that I work out, I'm going to be counting those reps as part of the 200. So if I get more than 200 reps into my workout, then that's going to count. And, spoiler alert, I usually do more than 200 reps in a workout, even if it's a heavy workout. So that's the way I'm going to be working this, to try to decrease that overload, to try to increase my desire to do gym-based activities and not just my gold program or my challenge program that I'm doing. And I'm hoping that I will see better results from that, because for me, one of the big things that I need to do is I need to be focusing on my accessory movements as an older guy with aging and battered joints, to make sure that my joints and my muscles are all in a really good state to be able to exercise and to endure repeated exercise, rather than hitting the same thing again and again and then forgetting about some of those accessory movements. I hope that you enjoyed this series. I hope that this gives you something for you to think about as you go towards your goals. I try to lay it out as to where I am. Honestly, the idea that I set up a 365-day challenge and ended up at a 200-day challenge, I hope that you can learn from that. I hope that you can learn from the fact that I was doing it what I thought was the right way, gathering some momentum, building my body up a little bit at a time, and still scaled up too fast and ended up having joint pain. I hope that those things are helpful for you to learn and to hear from somebody in the fitness world that it's not all rainbows and unicorns, and that often we fall short of the goals that we set. But regardless, as I said, I was very happy with the gains. I'm very happy with some of the things that I relieved with it. And I think that this practice of putting in an increasing amount of activity that I'm doing on a daily basis is definitely something I'm going to stick with, and that I would love to see you try out and see if you can build a program as well. Thanks for joining us here on the Go Therics channel. If you would like more information and more transparent videos about life and fitness of a 40-something-year-old guy, you're in the right place. Thanks.